Hello everyone, welcome to EdChange Global Conference 2018. My name is Vlatka Butkovic. I'm a principal at Butkovic Education Centre in Zagreb, Croatia. I can see that I have my colleague Ivana Mihajlovic here.
Hello.
And she'll be joining me because the stuff that I'm talking about is something that we work with and do throughout all of our classrooms. The topic of my presentation is, and I'm the principal at the school. The topic is communication skills integration, because while talking to parents and students, and I've been teaching for over 20 years now, we have noticed that their communication skills are deteriorating. The faster thinkers they are becoming, they are at communicating to one another, communicating to their teachers. Very often, our students are open with us in our classrooms, at our classes, but then they don't present themselves at their best in their public school environment. So the question was, what do we do to improve their skills and to help them get out of the mess that they found themselves in? The disadvantages, the obvious disadvantages of their environment, which is very different from our environment as teachers when we grew up, are that their attention span is now shrunk to 8 seconds. It used to be 12 seconds, they say. I have no idea how they measure it, but 8 seconds is something everybody talks about. We can see that in the classroom because if you look at their eyes, they start looking around the classroom and losing track of their thought or somebody else's thought much faster. Another setback is that they have this fake feeling of being informed, which is very obvious with older students, our middle school students and high school students, because we work with all ages, from preschool to adult courses. So the older they get, when they reach 10 or 12, they think that they've already know everything, that they found out everything just because they saw it on YouTube. And they don't realize that you have to immerse in the topic and really do your own research in order to own your knowledge. The third setback would be poor social skills. So the youngest generation that we have this year, our last meeting this school year was about students saying hello less and less. We have to encourage them, we have to remind them of the way they enter their own classroom and they greet their own friends. When I speak to my teenage students, they are very much annoyed by the comments that are made on these particular things. The thing is that they are not only not aware of these setbacks, no one tells them how to get out of it. The advantages are that the new kids are capable of doing two things at the same time, which can be really useful in the classroom. They want to do 7, but you try and guide them into doing the 2 things. So what do we do? The tools, the educational tools are very useful. Although since we teach only language courses, sometimes you just need to talk with them. You don't want anything plugged in as a distraction. Music helps because then they just diverse part of their attention to the music, to the environment, and go back to the topic and to the group they're talking with. Another thing with these kids is they're eager to innovate. They're constantly hype about everything. So if you throw them a good topic, the topic that they really recognize themselves in, then you get a very, very efficient classroom. And they're quick thinkers. The attention span trained them into think fast, react fast. So what our biggest challenge is as teachers, I believe, with the age difference of 25 years or even more from our students, is that we have to understand how quick they are and how slow we seem to them. So how do we help them get ready for the real world? And do we really know what the world is going to be like? The students that are just, I'm trying to remove, I can't remove Ivana's window. The students that are starting primary school this year, I think it's going to be 2032 by the time they reach adult age and start start finding work. So how do you get ready? How do you prepare someone for the world that you have no idea what will look like? We decided we have to introduce in our everyday classroom practice, we have to introduce models of communication. There are many options. The ones that I chose, presented to my staff, and that was embraced. So the choices are campfire conversation as a model, fast turn, last turn. We practice nonverbal communication with them. We teach them to provide feedback, which is a skill they are never taught in our public schools. And we teach them to map the process and recap. There are very strict rules about it. They are simple, there aren't many. I'll present you the rules shortly. What I want to stress out is that to provide feedback. Teachers, when I talk to them, when I do training courses with teachers in public schools and different environments, they think they are providing feedback to the students just by telling them, this is what we are working on today. That's not it. If you watch or read Dylan Wiliam and his fabulous work on providing feedback, there's no feedback. It's just an opinion unless you provide and offer steps for future growth and future development of a topic or something. But it's not only, if you still do that to the students and don't teach them how to do that amongst each other, you're still teaching at them, and you cannot expect them to feel involved. We teach them also to map the process and recap. I'll show you what it means. The thing is that they forget what they were doing half an hour ago, even more yesterday. But there are ways, we found the ways, and Ivana was my colleague, and we, when we implemented, we were asked to organize classes in American International School of Zagreb. And it was art classes originally, and I proposed to make, to rearrange their program for the last 8 weeks. So what we did is we combined art, physics class, and communication skills workshop with them in order to teach them what's behind any of the topics, any of the subjects. We wanted at least 2 subjects to finally overlap and to show them the connections, and then we wanted them to be able to talk about what they learned and what it was for. I'll show you the result in the end of this presentation. So, campfire conversation. Just the name of it illustrates enough to teachers and students the difference between having fun, sitting around fire or common topic, if you like, or sitting one behind another without any eye contact or communication. So the rules for campfire conversation are openly shared with the students. They're asked to remember them. They even write them down so that they have a place to go and check if they missed any of the steps. But really, they are so easy for them to remember that just after the first round, if anyone raises a hand, somebody else from the kids will point out that you're not supposed to do that, you have to listen to one another, and so on. So campfire conversation means that you sit children, preferably in a circle. They have to feel comfortable. It can be on the floor. We have a wonderful garden. We very often sit them on the pillows in our backyard. But whatever, as long as it's not behind the desk, and as long as they feel comfortable. You let them decide who will be the first one to go. We sometimes tell them, choose the dirtiest shoes. And whoever has the dirtiest shoes is the one starting. That way you avoid at least 5 minutes of them trying to agree on who should start the first round. So the student starts, let's say, clockwise direction. There's the topic that is already discussed with them in the beginning or announced. They read something, any kind of introduction before you use campfire conversation is fine, as long as they're clear what the topic is. Their duty is then to state their own opinion on the topic in, let's say, 2 sentences maximum. Sometimes you have a talker and that person, that little kid, would love to have at least 15 minutes of his own stream of thoughts, but that's not what you want. You want them to dig their own thoughts and to summarize and put them in 2 sentences. You allow the third if the stuff they're sharing is really smart and worth sharing. The second kid, so the next child, shouldn't repeat whatever he or she has heard, but add something as an additional value so that they build together common and shared story about it. They don't have to agree with someone before them. They don't have to. So they either build on a similar point of view or they oppose the previous point of view. But the way they formulate their sentences and the number of the sentences that they use makes a huge difference. For them, the biggest challenge is not even to talk, but not to interrupt one another. So biggest rule is no rising hands. And then there's another version of rising hands, and that's twitching, making faces, heavy breathing when they want something to say. Tell them, explain to them that it's all a message and then that the speaker is being distracted by that. They very much, after they did at least their first 2 sentences, they appreciate the quiet environment and the space to share their thoughts. So they are very much more cautious with how they behave while somebody else is speaking. The second round is more of a wrap-up of whatever the topic is. And after that, you can choose whatever you want to do with the result. They can either put it in writing, they can record. We use, since all of our children have, let's say, from grade 2 on, they have their own cell phones. We show them where to record, so they can record their opinion, they can record whatever the stream of thought is. I've heard, I got some great ideas that I can't wait to discuss with Ivana and the rest of my team. Today, EdChange Global, some new options, among other things, is podcasts, seesaw, and so on, but that's another topic. So there are definitely many options to what to do once the kids reach some kind of conclusion. The advantages of campfire conversation is that the shy child isn't interrupted. There's always a very, very energetic kid, and there's usually a shy kid too in the same classroom. I've witnessed a shy girl finally speak up, and it was really a pleasure to hear her speak. You would always clear the space for her, but this was different. She wasn't embarrassed by me trying to silence somebody else in order to be able to speak. They have to listen in order to participate in round 2, because they can't continue the conversation without listening to one another. And sorry, the thing is that campfire conversation is really the model for later professional life. Not many people really have the skill of attending a meeting with actively participating and not interrupting anybody else, so that in order to bring the new value of the meeting into the team. So this model of communication, I think, is proven to be very, very useful for them. I saw it for the first time at Dr. Fran Perlman's Adaptive Schools Leadership Program, and that was just the way we teachers, there were 50 of us, were broken into groups to discuss to one another, and I immediately knew that that would be the model that would be our children. Another thing is, which is of great importance, is that it requires little supervision quickly after you introduce the model to the kids. So the teacher becomes the facilitator, and you can have the children work on their own. They pretty quickly forget about you, and you just moderate attention that the rules are being followed. But they do it for you even. This is my group of communication skills workshop, and so we were working on campfire conversation model, first turn, last turn, that I'll show you in a short while. Dora was the project hijacker. Whoever had a thought, she was all over that person, trying to win over her own idea. So once we started, so that was the beginning of the class, and I wanted them to see that it's very difficult and very inefficient to speak in a way and collaborate in a way that they are used to. Once we started campfire conversation model, Dora was silenced. Her ideas were wonderful, so I just started with her. No, she chose to start, but it was a good decision because she threw out a very good idea and people had to build on it. Otherwise, she would have imposed all of the steps of the development of the project. Tomislav was the youngest. He would never speak up had he not have the chance in this circle of trust. And we used Tomislav as our outside audience, not typical audience. We used him to provide feedback on whether the topics that we discussed are interesting to younger audience or not. Philip, the talker, was the one who presented the whole thing in the end. The group decided that Dora would be too eager to tell everything at the same time, and Philip, who can talk, was very much honored to be allowed to present the entire group's work. Emma was the shy one. She wanted to attend the workshop because we met at another workshop that I held. So she wanted to come and join me again. It was a big deal for her to join the group that she's never met. And after maybe 15 minutes, the hugs that you see lasted for next 3 hours. First and last turn is a bit more complicated for kids to understand, so you can start using them with, let's say, kids age 12, 11 to 12. It is a great tool for breaking class into smaller groups. So campfire conversation can be used with up to 15 kids. Even we split, did we split the class? There were 15 kids in American International School. Did we split the classroom in 2 groups, or did we work with 1 group only? 1, yeah. And it worked just fine. Yeah, we had the rows that was for them to do something with their hands, because it's a big problem for them when they start meddling with their hands. They forget their stream of thought. So Ivana brought velvet rows for them. So whoever held the rows had the turn to speak, right? And that was nice. And yes, she can share later. Would you? How the children opened up during campfire. Remember the kid, you remember the name, I think, from Vietnam, was it? Was very quiet and never spoke to anybody. He was very insecure with his English. And then the campfire class, and he just said that he's heartbroken about his grandmother. Yeah. And the class was overwhelmed. They had no idea that he was in that state. His grandmother was ill, very ill, and he wasn't sure he would see her ever again. And we had many of those life-changing moments for them, right? Breakthrough moments. For some of them, the kids were very open about it. This is the first time that they learned that about someone or something. Oh, just a second. I have my alarm went off on the cell phone. Just a second.
Anita.
So first and last turn helps you break groups into smaller groups. So let's say 3, 4 speakers per group. You help them choose the first speaker Same joke works all the time. Find the longest eyelashes in the group, or the dirtiest shoes, the craziest haircut, and they're pretty quickly in deciding who starts. The idea of first and last turn is this: the first speaker chooses a statement, or if they all have the same text in front of them, or they've just seen a video or listened to the podcast, the first speaker chooses a statement, and that speaker doesn't explain why the choice. So other students take in explaining the reasons to justify the choice or to oppose the choice, but mainly to justify the choice so that they are taught how to find, how to look at things from somebody else's point of view. So it looks like this. First child states a sentence or reads, let's say, a two-sentence paragraph. Then the remaining three, again, without interruption and no more than 2 to 3 sentences, explain why that choice, what would the reasons be. And then after they're done, the first student concludes the round with his or her own thoughts. Very often, after the first and last turn, we would get that they kind of had their own choice, but they understood their own choice better after all the children explained it. So they basically had their own opinion explained to themselves and helped them elaborate their point of view. Obvious advantages of first and last turn conversation is that you teach children to acknowledge other person's opinion. Children apply the model of active listening in later life. 2032 or 2035 or something, they're going to be very young in a very different world. Listening skill and speaking skill could be one of their biggest assets. Maybe everything else we're teaching them will be outdated by then. The shy child is not interrupted, and the shy child finally has their own 5 minutes. And everybody has to embrace their own opinion. The extroverts redirect to active listening. They would wiggle on the chair, they would try to take a breath and start breathing in order to speak, but they are very aware because the group is small that they're not supposed to interrupt anyone, and they actually do redirect to active listening because when their turn is to speak, they want to say everything in those 2 to 3 sentences. So you get a kid from having like zillions of thoughts, very quickly those thoughts aren't elaborated because the only point in those thoughts is to be counterpart to another speaker. You have them cut that and let go. They have to let go of all the excess thoughts and stick to the ones that could prove their point, which teaches them again to summarize and to paraphrase. A skill they don't know, they know how to fight, they don't know how to paraphrase, and paraphrasing is very, very useful when leading difficult conversations. It's not very typical for a Croatian environment, for instance, and if you're not cautious in some of the cultures, I had a talk about paraphrasing with some of my colleagues, principals in Macedonia, Poland, Hungary, and we agreed that paraphrasing can be very tricky, but American environment uses paraphrasing quite a lot to lead difficult conversations and try to find their way out of them in order to show the speaker, the person on the other side of the conversation, that they might want to check on their own decisions. So summarizing and paraphrasing, elegantly done paraphrasing, helps them communicate with their own surrounding. It allows the teacher to break the class in smaller active groups. Then if you have very different kids in your classroom, you can decide whether you want an advanced kid in every group to stir up the conversation, or you want the advanced kids in a separate group to see where it takes them and have the other kids have their own pace. You can play just by deciding how you divide them into groups. You already are making great impact. But then once you make those decisions, little supervision again is required because the teacher becomes a facilitator and the rules are very clear. So the idea is to avoid having all the thoughts at the same time, all the conversations at the same time, and have them listen to one another. Whichever thought they have, what we've noticed is that once they have to stand in front of the whiteboard or in front of the class, present to one another, and even, I mean, even oral exercise is presenting. They're very self-conscious. They don't know how to stand, how to breathe, what to do with their hands, and it's very distracting for them. So another skill we want to teach our students is to learn how to present, how to shake off all the distractors. Not all, but let's say the key distractors are their hands, their breathing, and their tone of voice. So the first thing you do is to tell them about the iceberg of communication, but it's very abstract to them. So what I do is I tell them about the cow of communication. And first of all, I love this cow, and they always start laughing and they remember it immediately. What it's easy for them is that the head is the verbal message, and it's very small compared to the body. The body is nonverbal communication. They always focus on the verbal message. So they try to remember the content, they try to reproduce the content. They don't think about the way they're doing it. The body is nonverbal, but it doesn't even mean nonverbal communication is not only your body language, it's even the way your presentation is designed. So these are all the little elements that are discussed throughout any of our subjects, throughout any of the languages that we teach them. The image of the cow sticks to them, apart from being funny, is that the ear stands for what do I hear. That means that when they listen to somebody, they pay attention to the message. The eyes is what do I see. That means that if the speaker is wiggling, they recognize that it means that the person is insecure. If the speaker stands like this, which they very often do, again, very insecure and fighting with their own presentation and so on. How do you speak is the tone of voice, the breathing, and the combination of your voice and the way you disperse your eyes with the audience. Are you looking at one person? Are you presenting to one person only, or to the entire classroom? The more people you have looking at, the more relaxed you seem. What's your body language is a different story. And I asked my kids, what's the first thing that you see when you drive and you see cows on the fields? And one of the students said, well, cow's butt usually. And that was very easy for them to remember, that you actually do realize that there is this huge body, and then you consider the head. And when they have to talk about something, when they have to master some of the content, they only focus on the head, and nobody sees that. So communication skills and presentation skills to the little ones. These are kids that are 5-year-olds. I was trying to find a way to help them present, because when they start primary school, which is age 6 and 7 in Croatia, they're already in a new environment and they already have to speak up in front of the crowd. What I did is I called my friend, the magician, who has a 60-minute session with them. He teaches them a trick or two, and by the end of it, they have to present, to show the trick to the audience. They're completely unaware that what we're working on is their body language, their capability of presenting within a minute or two, otherwise the trick is not done well. And all the elements of public speaking are in that magic trick that they're presenting. The kids love it. Ivana is the one who works on the communication skills, while our magician Patrick teaches them the actual trick. They are so great at it that after just 60 minutes, they show us the trick, and no way we can find, we can see behind the trick. They're very happy with it. And they have this poem in the beginning. After you say the poem, you know that you're an official magician and you're not allowed to share your secrets. Different setting was with teenagers. We had the same thing with our American international school kids. With older kids, you tell them to, with older kids, you divide them in 3 groups. One group pays attention to the content. One group pays attention to the tone of voice, the breathing that I mentioned, and the third group pays attention to the body language, neck down. And they have to provide feedback to one another, and every group has to state their own, what they witnessed and what their opinion is. After they say what they've seen, they have to give at least 1 sentence of a suggestion of the improvement that may happen with that person, how to improve the posture, what would they have done differently, which is actually teaching them to provide actual feedback. So yes, the first group tracks the body language, the second tracks the tone of voice and breathing, and the third group tracks the deliverance of the content. We point out to them that mirroring is very important. They are completely unaware that you can influence your own audience just by the way you stand in front of the audience. So if you wiggle, they start to wiggle. If you feel relaxed, or if you at least present, you feel relaxed, the whole audience relaxes, then it goes back to you, helps you relax. Mirroring is a very new thing for them, and we can't stress it enough to the students, and I can't talk enough to my teachers, the importance of mirroring in everyday communication. So every group provides the feedback to the speaker. They report their impressions, they know the positive elements, and they suggest improvements. That's what makes it the feedback, not the personal opinion. A child builds upon the feedback that is provided in the safe environment, and safe environment is very important. They know it's safe because the rules are clear, and really we haven't witnessed anyone insulting anyone ever. They're very cautious with acknowledging positive elements, but with suggesting improvements, which is very different from just being critical. And then the last thing is we teach them how to keep track of their work, because they keep forgetting everything you worked with. They remember the topic, they remember the key elements, but not the fine thread in between. The first thing is we have clear learning targets that are clearly explained to them, discussed at the beginning of the classroom of the class. It's not only told at them. So we have to be sure as teachers that the children understand what they're expected to master by the end of every class. That way, at the end of the class, we can talk and see if the child has reached that point or needs some further assistance. This is a picture of our physics teacher working with kids in the American International School of Zagreb. So they were learning about balance, and they were very excited. We gave them white coats so that they feel important. And they had 90 minutes of understanding balance because their topic was a mobile sculpture. So we wanted to explain to them the physics behind that kind of art. Their instructions were, and since they were very excited, it was very important that the instructions were on the whiteboard, clearly stated. And that is that when they hear the music, they have to put down whatever they're working on, write down a sentence or two, and take a snapshot of the situation. So while they were playing wires, trying to find the right spot for their mobile to balance, they had to find the best snapshot, the best picture of it in order to illustrate their steps of work. It helped a lot later. We saved all of their snapshots. We just used one iPad that was given from one hand to another. So it maybe took away a few minutes of the entire project, and we had all the images at the same time, at the same place. they stored their own notes, and we talked about their notes not during this class, but at the next class when when Ivan and I did communication skills practice with them. And it was funny that the first thing they said when I asked them, okay, so what were you doing for the past 2 weeks? They said, who remembers what happened 2 weeks ago? After taking a look at their notes, 90 minutes later, with clear guidance, first time they created a poster that was illustrated and explained with all the steps were explained of their work. The next time they did a short story on it. We didn't have a lot of time. I would have loved to have them have a podcast made or something. I'll show you the result of it. Let me see. Just a sec. I'll show you the results. So our third round ended up with the kids, just a second, with the kids recording like a brief interview. Just a second, I had it already open. Everything is already open here. There. So we improvised pretty quickly. We found the intro music for their session. Oh. Well, the link is embedded in the presentation. For some reason, it doesn't want to work like this. Sorry. Oh. Okay, I'm back here. So the conclusion is that children learn from the teachers they love. And if you provide them a relaxed environment, if you provide, just like EdChange Global, if you help them feel safe, if the rules are clear, and if there aren't too many rules, they can find their own way to find their place in the classroom. Let me know, these are my contacts at the bottom of this slide. Feel free to contact me with any questions you may have, or if you need any of additional examples of what we do. Ivan, is there anything you would like to add?
Well, maybe just some things you mentioned. I want to agree once again and say how important they are and how amazing the results can be. The campfire conversation is a great tool, and especially with no rising hands, as you said, then they start breathing in a funny way, or they're trying to talk and they are not allowed to. And that's very, very interesting to see and important, because I mean, it's a great way to work on your presentation skills as well. The nonverbal communication was amazing, and especially in the project in the American International School of Zagreb, as you said, the three groups. One of them was looking at the content, the other one looking at the body, and the third one was the tone of voice. The feedback the groups gave the presenter later was amazing, because nobody was aware that they are wiggling and moving their hands or maybe scratching their arms. They were not aware of that, and one by one they became better in presenting in that 90 minutes or maybe a little bit more. That was a great thing. The opportunity for shy kids to open up and speak up is also amazing, and how they start sharing some information, personal information, especially when the task was tell me one truth and two lies about yourself. if
Mm-hmm.
I'm correct, if I remember,
Yeah,
remember
I
correctly.
forgot about it.
Yeah, because people started sharing their new hobbies with each other, and that they had no idea, and especially some topics like, oops, sorry, with the Vietnamese guy that just lost his grandma and was very sad, and his friends didn't have a clue about it. Do you remember this Andrea, the Italian guy who got like fifth baby brother?
Yes, yes, yes.
He was really, really happy about it, and I think that some of the classmates didn't even know his mom was pregnant. Maybe he wasn't talking about it at all, but this day he was just really happy, like, I got a fifth brother. Like, no way, that's a lie. No, that was the truth. So yeah, you can find very interesting information about your friends and classmates. What else? Yes, for our American colleagues that will see your presentation, remember that we're coming from Croatia, and English is our foreign language. So remember that everything that Vlatka told you is told in English. So our kids talk about everything Vlatka told you. They talk about it in English.
Yes, the instructions are given in the language they're being taught. That's very important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. And I mean, it's even more difficult with the other foreign languages that are not so common or easy for us, let's say. So that's a struggle, and we have a lot to do, but it's very, very, very nice. About the magicians workshop, I wanted to add how great and unexpected it was to work with 5-year-olds and try to teach them communication skills.
They start by reciting the oath, right?
Oh yeah.
And we took them to a stage in a theater. One of the workshops was in our wonderful theater. So we took them backstage to the stage of the theater, and they stood for the first time in their lives and recited the oath to the magician. So after that, they were valid magicians.
That was a great moment, really. And after the workshop, the one that we had in our center, I remember, all of the kids were at the workshop for the first time. And after 60 or 75 minutes, they presented the tricks to their parents. The parents couldn't believe, because their shy little boy or a girl stood in front of, I don't know, like 8 other magicians and 16 other parents that he or she doesn't know, and they presented the magic trick. They were still a little bit shy, like looking at me or Petrek, the magician, looking for help. But everybody was it was a very safe and encouraging environment. So the parents were really, really shocked.
We have this freedom at our education center to try any good practice that we see. I'm the one making decisions, and I'm supported with a wonderful team of, how many are there? There are 11 or 12 of us this year. Teachers of different languages, and that's only, I'm talking about language teachers. We also have robotics classes, writing skills classes. All the skills that we see the children need, we provide them at our education center. So we are kind of a support to public education system. The kids that need additional help, kids who can do wonders if you provide them with enough support. So the advanced classes, all of that exists at our center that had, let's say, over 500 students last year only. Everything you've heard is implemented in all of our courses. And there are additional communication skills courses for the ones who want to learn more about it. something I'm working on right now that I think will be built in our curriculum next year is the obligatory course for the parents, because you cannot do this without the complete triangle: parent, student, and teacher. If we stay with only teacher and student and nothing's happening at home, we just have to teach the parents at least 3 key steps to adjust their kid while they're presenting to them something they have to do at school. So please get the parents involved. It's easier with the students than with the parents sometimes. They tend to be defensive, but then if you point out that they really don't have a clue how to deal with the obstacles their children are up against, and very often we hear the same sentence, and that's, but I questioned him at home and it was all A's, and then he goes to school, he comes with a C, and they blame the child or they blame the universe, but they never think that the child actually presented a C, because no one could reach through the non-verbal language, could reach through that to the actual message. So children need help, they don't need criticism, and the disadvantages as we see them with the kids today, with the communication, with social networking, fast thinking, they really are not disadvantages. They could be breaking points for us in order to speed up our teaching and leave it up to them to make some of the decisions and to discuss them and collaborate. So that would be it, right, Ivana?
Yeah.
Thank you all. Cassie, you can stop recording now.